Cool. Hi. Hello. We are live. Hello, hello. Welcome everyone. Um, Hope you guys are all having a good day. It's morning here. I'd like to welcome everyone to my live stream. I'll be doing some gouache painting today, which is completely different from what my course is, but I feel like, you know, doing gouache paintings and traditional paintings really helps accelerate your understanding of color in the digital space. So today I'm just gonna show you how I'm gonna paint um, a still life from a photograph that I have. It's actually two beats that I've had this photo of for a while. So that is what I'll be doing today. Um, and as if you don't know me, my name is Susan. Forgot to introduce myself early on. My name is Susan, and I actually work in the animation industry. I specifically do backgrounds, paint backgrounds, but I also do a lot of design for advertising studios as well. I work mostly in digital, but in my free time, I actually do a lot of traditional gouache paintings. So yeah, I've worked for Netflix, Cartoon Network, and Nickelodeon, and a bunch of other studios. Yeah. So if you guys have any questions throughout the whole live, feel free to ask them. I'll be happy to answer them. But yeah, so let's move on to the gouache painting. So I don't know if you guys can see, it's a little blurry, but I already drew my base layer, and I kind of started adding the background color from the photo that I have. So these are two beats. They're going to be like still lifes. And I have my materials over here. I'm using Winsor Newton gouache, which is right here. If you guys can see, it's a little dark. Yep. And then I've got some acrylic gouache, Holbein acrylic gouache right here too. So this is my enamel palette that I usually use, and I've kind of like squeezed out some of the colors. Normally, I don't use this turquoise ice green from acrylic gouache, but because the background that I used for the painting for these beats are kind of that turquoisey color, to save time, instead of mixing it, I just bought some straight out of the tube, which is totally fine. Um, and as you can see, some of my colors are running a little bit because I've just added some water. I usually have a spray with me. Gouache tends to dry really, really fast. Um, but it's also, water soluble, kind of like a halfway between acrylic and watercolor. You can use it both ways. But in order for it to stay wet, I just dab some water on it. So yeah, it's starting to mix a little, but that's okay. So yeah. Yeah, so I actually, before going live, I started just kind of doing the background a little bit because that usually just takes a bit of time. What I'm using here is just two flat brushes. Uh, that's pretty much what I like to use. My paintings tend to be a lot more graphic and angular, so I just use the flat brush to, make those shapes. So, like I said, if you guys have any questions regarding to gouache, feel free to ask while I'm painting. So normally when I start off gouache, I just tend to paint what's the largest area. So in this case, it is the background. So I'm just gonna, I usually don't go too intense on it first. I add a bit of water just to see how the color looks on the page, and then I start building up on it. So right now, I'm just painting the background. Also, if I don't answer any questions, I can answer them at the end too. And then that way we can have more time while I'm painting. So right now, the background that I have in my photo is kind of cool, and the ice green color right here is kind of warm. So I'm mixing it with some of this pink and to just give it that, just to cool it down just a little bit more. You can also bring the palette right here. You guys can see it. What's the difference between gouache and acrylic? Okay, so acrylic is a lot more, you say, plasticky, if that makes sense. It actually, you can, if you put so much on top of a canvas, you can actually peel it off. It's very like plasticky. It dries really fast, just like gouache. But gouache, it stays on your page a lot more. Like I said, it's like a mix between, if you put if acrylic and watercolor had a kid together, that's gouache, if that makes sense. So with gouache, I can water it down and use it as as not acrylic, sorry, as watercolor, but I can also build it up so it looks like it's acrylic. Hope that answers your question. So normally these paintings do take me quite a bit. I'm going to try and get some of it out. How many mediums can I use in an illustration? So that really depends what I like to use. With gouache, you can actually layer color pencils on top, which is really awesome. If you're like, oh, I don't have time to finish or paint everything, you can actually add some more texture using color pencils. I've done that before with like small little lines that I don't have a thin enough brush for, and I can just use color pencils on top. You can use however many mediums. Like I've seen people use a mix of everything. Some use acrylic with, you know, you know, pencils or any kind of pastels. Like, you can experiment however you like. There's no limit. I'm gonna switch to a smaller brush. If you guys can see it, it's a little dark. I'm gonna start painting one of the beets, which is a little kind of like reddish, pinkish orange. So I'm just gonna add a bit of that corally pink to it. So right now I'm just adding the base color. I'm not worrying too much about detail. Like in any kind of painting, just kind of blocking out everything will help you in the long run so you don't obsess over, details at first. You just want to get the local colors correct. Then you can add shadows and everything. What's great about gouache is that you can, unlike watercolor, with watercolor you have to start with really, really light colors because once you paint the darker colors you can't go back. But with gouache you can actually do that. So if I make a color too dark, I can actually add some light colors to it later. So my paintings tend to be a little more geometric. That's why I really like using the flathead brush. So how has using gouache influenced your digital art skills? So I know it is a completely different medium, but I think painting with gouache or any kind of traditional medium you actually learn how to mix colors true to life. So when I usually take my gouache outside to paint, I go landscape painting with friends as well. We sometimes do, still life studies. But what I've learned with all this is that I don't rely on like a color picker or anything. I actually learn how these colors come by or how I can mix and create these colors with the limited amount of palette that I have. And I also learned, like, while traditional painting, I've also learned like what colors make a color cooler, or what colors when I mix together will create a brighter color. And that actually has helped me in terms of my digital painting. And with that said, I also take it outside to paint. So I learn from life as well. So I think that part is really helpful for digital painting, because the digital painting color scape with a traditional color paints, it's completely different. The sense is really different. Digital colors can only go so far. So if you want a painting to look as real as like a traditional painting, it's great to like you know practice with real paints. I never really got super comfortable with my digital skills until I went to go out to paint even more. So it's been very helpful. I highly recommend it. And it's fun. You get away from your computer. I'm starting to add a bit of color subtleties. I can see. I can go darker. So here, to make the red a little more darker and cooler, I've added some of my Viridian. What brand do I recommend? Oh, yeah, I love using Winsor Newton, which is this one right here, Winsor Newton. And I also love mixing it with the Holbein, Holbein, yeah, acrylic wash, which is this one. I like to use a mix both, just because Holbein has different set of colors that are very vibrant, and then Winsor Newton has a basic set, which is great too. If you're looking for a better alternative, I think there's a brand called Arteza that is online that is a lot more cheaper, but the quality is still really good. That's what I've heard from other artists. So yeah, if that helps. So the way I'm mixing colors is that the thing I learned from school, from my one specific teacher, is that I don't ever, never ever mix with black. And I've seen people use it a lot. This is actually not black. This is like ultramarine. But she always told me not to use black, and I've always somehow just uh, you know, have followed that rule, and I've never ever mixed with black. But I've seen people do it and it comes out really pretty too. So uh, you don't have to follow all the rules. You can experiment, and if mixing black makes you feel comfortable, go for it. Like sometimes this ultramarine doesn't give me the darkest color that I want. So I wouldn't mind using black once in a while. So I also have a paper towel here, just to make sure that my paints don't get muddy. because once you mix so many colors together, it can get muddy. I'm going to try and paint the stem. Do you recommend something to paint without reference for shadow and stuff? Oh, I would say reference is always your best friend. I actually have a reference, like it's off screen right over here. I can show you guys. It's like right over here. Yeah, there's 2 beats right there. I always paint with reference because I'm a terrible, like I just have a terrible memory. I don't always remember how things look. And if you ever want to capture something as realistic as possible, it's great to have reference. I think it's always great when it comes to painting too. You kind of sort of start to understand how things work in real life too. So you have that library of references that you can go back to when you need to paint like a drawer or a cupboard. Like if I ever want to paint beets in a show or something, I have a picture of beets now. So in this blocking stage, I'm not too worried about all the curves and all the leaf um, shapes that I've done. I'm just trying to get the colors. So here I'm mixing my Viridian with my lemon yellow to get that nice limeish green. I'm just adding some lights. Very light over here. And there's some more yellowish green. I just want to know how you develop your portfolio to get various opportunities or if you took in studio. I want to work like you, working with me. Oh, yeah. So in terms of the questions about portfolio, how I developed my portfolio. It took a lot of trial and error. I've actually had several different types of things on my portfolio that didn't work and some did, and some of them are no longer on my portfolio because they really didn't work for what I was specifically going for. So if we're speaking about a background painting portfolio, I would say you should put a bunch of paintings, digital or even traditional. I've put traditional paintings that a lot of art directors that said like, oh, I can see that you can paint. You want to show them that you have these skill sets that you can paint backgrounds and show different times of days or show different scenarios. That's what they're looking for, really. With my portfolio, I actually I really wanted to work with color. That was my goal. You always want to have a goal in mind. I wanted to work with color, regardless if it was painting or like color design. So I just actually compiled a bunch of stuff that I felt like had a strong color sense that showed off my design in color, as well as that I can paint. So that was something that was my main goal. So once I started putting that together, it was probably like my 3rd try or something. I never got it right the first time, but yeah, on my 3rd try or something, it finally, like, I finally got to a point where a lot of recruiters or art directors were like, oh, I can see what you're doing. Like, you really can show that in your portfolio that this background painting, right? Or color, anything you want to work with color is what you want to do. And I would say, like, also don't be afraid to share your stuff online. I know it's scary and you don't really want people to look at your stuff because it's yours and you want to keep it safe and secret and you don't want people to tell you that it's something that it's not. So, but I would say, like, just be brave because there's a lot of people out there that are actually very supportive of your work, and you'll never know if you don't put it out there. So that's how a lot of recruiters, find work now, find artists, not work, find artists now. A lot of art directors are on Twitter or Instagram, and they're constantly looking. And if they're trying to crew up for a show, they'll be watching. So, put your stuff online. Don't be afraid. I'm trying to, I'll say yellow and gouache gets used up very fast. It's not as opaque as it is. So just trying my best. Trying like a darker color, I think. One good trick when you're mixing colors with gouache or any kind of paint is that any kind of complementary color to that color, if you mix them, it starts turning gray. So if you want to turn like your red paint into something cooler, you should mix a bit of green into it, and it starts making the colors a lot cooler. I'm starting to add some darks in here. Might go back into it later. I'm just filling out the shapes. Let's see. You can see that it's a little warm with the green, so I'm going to add a bit of blue to make it a little cooler. Do you like to use similar colors of the real objects, or do you like to mix and let them be different? Oh, yeah. So I try to stick as close, but not really. If there's a color that I feel like that can be enhanced from a photo, I like to play it up a little more. So like this radish actually is a lot more muted. Not radish, beet is a lot more muted in the photo, but I actually really love the intensity of it. So I decided to play it up just a little bit more. When I first started, when I first started using gouache, I actually really liked playing the colors to the T just because, it was what felt real to me. But as I started getting more comfortable with, stylizing the colors, I just liked experimenting and playing with it. So it was a lot more fun that way. Plus, you get to start learning about what color combinations like work and what doesn't. Is It looks like you don't use white while mixing. Why is that? Oh, okay. So I try to use white sparingly unless it's a really high key kind of painting. White tends to desaturate a lot of your colors. So I try to use it sparingly unless I have to. There are times where I have had to use white a lot, like if something looks a lot more muted or a lot more gray, uh, I will use it to get that color. But a lot of the times I feel like really don't. Like let's say with these greens that I have, I just mix the yellow with the Viridian, the lemon yellow and the Viridian. And once you mix them, it's already got that brightness to it. And also, if you have the correct kind of contrast in your paintings, your lights will start getting brighter, and then your darks will start getting darker. So it's also about contrast too. When I color my environment, everyone says use bright color, but I use both because sometimes we also need dark color. Can you explain why everyone uses bright color? I think, do you mean, do you mean like in terms of they think your paintings are a little too dark or something? I hope that's what you mean. Definitely, like it's the contrast kind of thing. In order for a painting to work, you always need a bit of light and dark, because if everything is too dark, you may not be able to see it as clearly. Especially when I'm like in a show, when I paint like a really dark background, I always tend to make sure that everything that is in there is still, like, you can still see it, and that all the rules of lighting and color still apply. So, you know, hopefully that explains it. But I think people just probably wants to see it clearly as well. You don't have to put the brightest of the bright, but you can still add a little bit of bright to bring out the dark colors. Hopefully that makes sense. I want to add, I'm running out of green. So I'm just making some darker colors. I think I need a few darks in here. So these leaves are kind of interesting because there's so much different ranges of greens to it. There's like really yellowish greens and then really cool greens. So I'm just kind of making my way through them. So I always run out of color too. So I'll have to, especially yellow. Yellows always run out really fast. So here, I'm using a bit of white actually. I'm just trying to block out the shapes of the leaves. I know it's taking a while. This is my first time painting these. Are they radishes? I don't even remember. Someone correct me. Do you have a favorite brush, or could you recommend some? I love the double brush you've got. Oh yeah. So actually, this one that I'm using is my favorite brush. It's like a flathead brush. I have a bigger one right here, and that is pretty much what I use in my paintings. I sometimes actually have like a this is a like a liner brush. It's really thin, and I use it to just, at the end when I have a lot of details and I want to add some specific lines, or, when there's architecture, there's a lot of stuff, I will just use that brush and add some of those. But pretty much I just use this uh, flat brush. I'm a very simple person. Oh, some of my blues are already a little dry. I think I want to start on the other. I like to it, what you'll find about when you watch me paint is that I tend to want to paint other things. Like I tend to go this way and then paint this and then paint that later and then come back to it. I can't make up my mind. I can never paint one thing all at once. So I'm sorry if it gets a little confusing, but that's just how I paint. I'll get bored and then I'll come back to it. And add a bit brighter spot to reddish. Not bright enough, so I'm gonna use some whites. Also, don't put your cup of water near any of your water source, because I have done that several times. I dipped my brush into my drinking water, and that's not fun. So, just a reminder of just being careful with that. I think I want to paint the other. Like, I think it's a little more purpley, so I'm gonna go with some of my cooler colors and mixing my alizarin crimson with some of the ultramarine. I have a few blues like the cobalt blue and the cerulean. I have a few of these just because the ultramarine and the cobalt is a little warmer, and to kind of balance that out, if I need a cooler blue, I can use the cerulean. So this is more like a purpley. It's very muted brown, but actually I like the purple on it. So I'm just gonna paint that. Yeah. Also, hope it did click on the comments and I'm seeing everyone saying hi. So I'm like, hi everyone, thanks for joining. Yeah, feel free to ask any more questions. It doesn't have to be about painting. It can be about portfolio or working in the industry or anything that you're curious about. I think I want to add a bit more brown. It's a little brown, so I'm gonna add a bit of green. Oh, I have a question regarding portfolio. I did some paintings using movie scenes as a reference. Could I put these paintings in my portfolio? Absolutely, you can. I think if you're starting out and you want to show, you know, recruiters that you've been practicing, you can definitely just, you know, have a small little section. Don't make it your main point, but you can have a small little section of it where you're just, you know, analyzing and practicing film studies. I think it's great. And I think doing film studies really helps with understanding how to light a scene as well. So yeah, you can absolutely do that. But I think once you start building up your portfolio and like have more work that is professional, I would put the professional work over the movie stills. But it's a great starter kit for if you want to put stuff in your portfolio. I'm running out of green again. So here I'm just trying to get the right kind of dark color for the bottom of the beat. Right here. Oh, perfect. Sometimes it takes a few tries to get the color right. And you know, if you're unsure, paint on top of it, and then if it doesn't work, then you can just paint over it. I actually used to paint with oils. Um, not the not is amazing. Not my favorite thing to have because it didn't dry as fast, and when I needed to travel with it, it just was so clunky. And I think that's why I switched to gouache. It was just so fast drying, and if I made a mistake, I can correct it immediately. Oh, yeah, I like to mix gouache with other materials. I recently did use a bit of not watercolor. I did use some color pencils over the top of my gouache to add some of that texture, which was, I've never done that before, and it was such a surprising little outcome, and I really loved the effect of it. I have used gouache with Posca pens as well, just because I love using those two together because the consistency is so similar. And if I want something really quick, like a color really quick, um, having a Posca pen that actually has that color helps. Yeah, yeah, I would say just like experiment however you like. You know, watercolor is also great with color pencils too. Do you use do you use to practice gouache and then make the final touch in Photoshop, or which programs do you use? Actually, with all my gouache paintings, I don't use anything to touch it up. I tend to paint it. So this is my process, and I know that maybe not everyone will do it this way, but I just tend to like to do it. I do go outside and paint with some friends, and obviously the light changes a lot, and you can't really always finish it on spot. I like to paint small. That's why like I can finish it on spot if I can. But if I can't, actually take a photo and then take it home and then just add the details with gouache. I don't actually touch it up with Photoshop. I tend to want to keep it as a separate entity. So if it's gouache, it'll stay as gouache. And if it doesn't work out the way I want it today, I can leave it for tomorrow and then come back to it and see how it would look like with fresh eyes. But yeah. But if it's in regard to like me doing digital paintings, I use Photoshop. And I've been trying out Procreate actually, so it's been nice. So this radish, or sorry, actually has a different colored stem. So there is in the picture like this really beautiful magenta. Since I technically could mix it, but it's gonna take forever to do it. So I brought a color out of the tube to make it. I know, I bought a color out of the tube. I'm not mixing it. It's actually I used to not want to do that a lot. I used to be like, oh no, I bought color out of the tube. But actually I've slowly grown to like buying certain colors out of the tube. If I want a certain brightness, I don't mind actually buying out of the tube. So the color that I'm using is Opera Pink from Winsor Newton, and it gives this beautiful magenta pink. And it's on the bottom parts of this beet in the photo, so I kind of want to capture that. And instead of spending all my time mixing it, I will just use it out of the tube. It's beautiful. It might be a little too bright, so I'm going to add a bit of like pink and purple to just dilute it down just a little bit. Okay. So, and then there's some cooler grays on the stem, so I'm going to mix some of that. So with some of that pink, I'm going to add a bit of green to gray it down. And then I'm going to add some white. And because it looks a little greenish orange, I'm just going to add a bit of that just to. Maybe a little lighter. There we go. The stem is a little bit of a muddy color, but I like to break it down. So there's a bit of a mix of grays in this section, and then I'll still leave some of the magenta. I think I should add some dark colors. Okay. Sometimes with really dark colors, I like to start fresh. So I mix the three of my most darkest color on my palette, which is the Viridian, Alizarin Crimson, and Ultramarine to get that black. Well, quote unquote black, not true black. Still a little purpley, which is fine. I think I can add some red to make it a little brown. It's really dark. Yeah, the reason why I was starting to feel like I need to add darks is because some of the stems are getting lost, and I feel like if I keep adding light colors, I will lose a few of the ones I've already painted. So adding dark colors will help your light colors pop out. So, yeah. I'm just going in with some warm darks. There's a leaf there. Let's paint that leaf, shall we? That yellow is not very opaque. So yeah, that's the one thing about lemon yellows, is that it's not very opaque. I also have a cadmium yellow that I can squeeze out, just like this orangey color, which might help warm up some of the greens that I have. Yep, I'm just adding this. Works really well. I kind of like it, but I think I could go a little more green. So I'm gonna add some of that Viridian. Maybe I'll change it later, but right now it's not the most important. So, add some more colors. Paint some of the leaves up here. I'm just painting the big shapes. What kind of tape am I using? Oh, it's just masking tape. I have a giant roll right here. I kind of like this masking tape, but I kind of don't, because when you start peeling the edges off, you have to be really careful. Sometimes I've ripped like edges, not my best moment, but that's the only one available in the US in the art stores that I think I really like. I've actually just found out that you can use washi tape and it peels off the page really easily and it still gives you those nice edges. So if you have any washi tape, it's so much better than like the masking tape. Also, when I was traveling to England, at this art store, they had this painter's tape. I forgot the brand. It was like this pink one, and I still have it at home. I haven't touched it much because I don't want to use it all. You can't buy it in the U.S., but it was one of the best like masking tapes ever, and it almost like is like um, washi tape as well. So yeah. And some of that cooler blues and some of the leaves. Now there's a lot of white space. So I know within this stream I won't be able to do the details, but usually when I have more time, I tend to be a little more careful about where I want the details to go. But right now, I just want to show you guys how I like block colors and such. It's a little darker. There's a bit of a dark spot right here. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask. Can you use these paints on fabric as well? Actually, I have never tried that. I'm not really sure I can answer that. But there is specific paint for fabric if you are wondering. If you go to your local art store or craft store, I'm sure there's like paint that is just for fabric. I can say that the times that I've gotten paint on my shirt, it's washed off. So, so I don't think this would be fabric friendly. Okay, so I'm gonna grab something. So it looks like we have a few more minutes before I have to end the stream. But let me know if you guys have any more questions. I'd be happy to answer them. I'll also post my final painting on Instagram or something in the next few days whenever I get the chance to like finish this. But I'll show you guys what I did. I can also try and, you know, show my breakdown if I can. But if I don't, you'll be able to see the final piece on Instagram. So what I have right now is just like blocks of color that I put darks and lights. And usually I take the time at the end to add the details in. Most of my paintings, as you can see, they're very stylized. So I tend to leave that last. I just want to get the colors down. Not so much green. So this green that I'm using, Viridian, is very cool. Gives you more like a blue-green effect. So there's another green that you can use called sap green from Winsor Newton. That's a lot more warmer. You want that like healthy leaf look, I would say. You can use that. You can also mix it. I would suggest finding a very opaque lemon yellow to help you with that, or like add some of the cadmium yellow. There, we got that nicer green. I want to play around with types of green. I think I can make it darker. Right now, adding colors. Cool. Great. Okay, I think I'm just gonna leave it for now. I think I have all the colors down. I think some of the white spots I can cover it with background or add some more dark colors, but this is pretty much how I paint within like this time limit. And as you can see, I got most of the shapes down, and it's pretty apparent that it is some kind of vegetable. So, but yeah, so I like to keep things simple, and I will add shadows and any more other darks later on. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to go to my Domestika course. I know it's a digital painting course, but I'd be happy to also answer any like gouache questions as well. So thank you so much. Oh, actually, I'll show you guys the reference picture for once. Like, so this is, right here. This is the reference picture. I bought these, like, fun fact, I bought these beets at a farmer's market, or radishes, at a farmer's market, and then I had a blue background, and I just took a picture of it, and it just seemed really fun. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I hope some of it helped and I answered some of your questions. So bye.
La idea es como algo muy frágil.
Se me fue la hebra.
I'm going to show you some examples. This is what we've got behind me.
¿Qué más preguntas tengo por aquí? ¿Cómo descubriste que lo tuyo